Hammer of the Ancients has been nerfed to the ground. I mean, it's hard to say nerfed, but we're going to go over that. You're going to probably notice your damage has gone down way down. So I want to talk about that here so you're not confused as to what happened and why. For the most part, you kind of should have expected this. So let's dive straight into it. What up, team? It is MurderInc talking about Hammer the Ancients for the Barbarians. Overperforming. I mean, I don't want to say overperforming. It was overperforming compared to Barbarians. Barbarians have struggled in the end game a ton, and Hammer the Ancients, aka Hota, which is what a lot of people call it, has been the go-to for end game. It's become flavor of the month. Everyone's swapping to Hammer the Ancients. And the problem is, I can't confirm this because I haven't seen any of the videos, but you were being able to hit for 20 million, 30 million, 40, and there were a lot of thumbnails showing 60, almost 70 million damage. Now, here's the thing with Hammer the Ancients. This should have been mentioned to everyone in the video within the first 60 seconds of the video. So if you aren't aware of this, Hammer the Ancients has been bugged since the release of the game. Did you know that? Hopefully you did. What's been bugged about it? So if you look at the required aspect for Hammer the Ancients, it's called Sovereign Vermices of Ancestral Force. Ancestral Force is the key. Hammer the Ancients quakes outwards, dealing 46% of its damage to enemies. As you can see, there's no multiplicative X there with the tooltip enabled. So it's just close to, I mean, if you get a perfect roll, which I had and got rid of, if you get 50%, it should be doing half of the damage in a much larger AoE. Now, what were people doing? So let's just generate all of our fury here. So if you look at this, you see that there's a large blue circle. Now, if you hit enemies at the edge of that large blue circle, it was doing, I believe, 3 to 4 times more damage than the actual Hota hit itself. So what was the viable strategy? You would run up to a mob. Let me see if I can find a mob here. Okay, so you'd run up to a mob like this right here. You would turn around and slam the ground, and the mob in front of you would be taking a ridiculous amount of damage here. Now don't look at these numbers and say, oh my god, Murder's hitting for negative damage. That's because I'm Whirlwind build and I have no gear or stats for Hammer the Ancients at all here. So I'm pretty much just showing you the playstyle on how it was working, like this spike fiend here. You would run up to it, you would face away from it, and you'd slam the ground, and that back hit was what was bugged, and it's what was causing Hammer the Ancients to hit for stupid numbers. So that should have been made fairly clear to you if you were playing Hammer the Ancients and you were following any type of guide. If it wasn't, unfortunately, you were kind of baited if you did in fact swap, thinking this is just how strong Hammer the Ancients is. It was never intended to be that strong. It was quite obvious from, I mean, I tested it myself, and among the horrendous playstyle of pushing that I've talked about in the past, I don't know, you could tell pretty quickly that some numbers just weren't adding up, right? They weren't adding up at all, and you probably wouldn't know this if you were swapping to Hammer the Ancients. You would just see the big numbers like, oh my god, this build is insane. It's way better than the average build. But as we just clarified here, that's not the case. It was actually way overperforming, and it was a clear bug because 50% of your Hammer the Ancient skill should not be doing 4 times the amount of a Hammer of the Ancient skill. Right? It just doesn't make any sense. So once you realize that's the interaction, and that's why the playstyle was based on you facing a mob, turning around and slamming the ground so the back edge hits the mob that was originally in front of you, you start to understand, okay, maybe there's something not right here for me. I mean, first of all, just think of the game design, right? I get that it works, but like, it's really funny watching some of the Uber Lilith clips of players facing away from Uber Lilith, slamming the ground and critting her for like 12 million in a full tank defensive build. It's kind of funny. And then when they head on, you're doing like, I don't know, 2 million, 3 million. So there's a clear damage discrepancy it's hard to overlook. So that's been fixed and balanced. Is Hammer of the Ancients nerfed, gutted, unviable? No, it's still fun. I did make a build called the Bleed Chains build. It's a ton of fun. I was not abusing that max range aspect roll. I was critting for a reasonable 9 to 10 million damage with extremely powerful gear, and that will still stay the same. I made sure I did that on purpose. As soon as I saw that bug interaction, like I previously mentioned, I said we're not playing this until it's fixed, because this is the key here. And I know a lot of people are upset. I think most of the reason why people are upset, whether they realize it or not, is they were baited if they didn't know it was bugged, and then they just swapped all of their gear to do that, which is why you got to be careful. And especially if you're a content creator, you really have to let people know, like, quickly that, hey, this isn't really working how it's supposed to be, but it's lit, so like you should definitely check it out. So that definitely should have been the kind of the first thing that anyone did in fact mention here. But you can still play Hammer of the Ancients. It's still going to be very fun. As far as pushing viability, it's going to, I don't know how well it's going to do. It's hard to say. I haven't played it to a point where I wasn't using, well, even when I was pushing, I can't say I wasn't using it. I was using the debugged effect of the quakes, because there was really no way to push, and because there was really no way to push keys like I was doing into the mid 90s without using that. But that's just because it was available to us. Now we're going to see what we can do from here on forward. Now that that was fixed, the damage is lower. We won't be able to one-shot the immediate threats that one-shot our characters anymore, so we're kind of back to square one with theory crafting a build. I am under no illusion that the game is solved at this point here. I'm about to release a video on a one-handed Whirlwind build that's doing stupid damage, not bugged, just tool tips that I don't know if were overlooked. There have been people that I've been talking with, and we noticed things and been sharing ideas, and I'm excited to get that video up to you guys because it's pumping, and it actually shares the same gear as Hammer of the Ancients. So you can actually use this build and transition straight into Hammer of the Ancients if you think it's fun, right? That's the key here. Most players aren't going to be pushing for 100 nightmare dungeons in a pre-season of a seasonal game. That's one big thing to keep in mind here. This is a seasonal game with no season currently out. So I get it. It's something players want to do just so they can get familiar with the process, but it's not a huge deal in my opinion, right? Seasons are the main point of Diablo 4. You know, no one's going to dispute that fact for sure. And the fact that there isn't a season currently out, we're seeing a very, very basic version of the game that is intended to kind of keep us sustained for the next year, month, however long players decide to play this game on a relatively consistent level. Or it could be like Path of Exile in Diablo 3, where a new season comes out, we play for 1 or 2 weeks, then we stop playing altogether. I don't think they want to go with that direction, and I hope not, because seasonal gaming is kind of the meta right now, and I don't think it's a bad thing, but it would be nice and a breath of fresh air to have a game where you could just play for a long time, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm not going to be swapping off a Barbarian, obviously, just we're Barbarians here, and you have to fix bugs like this. I know people are going to be upset, mostly because they got baited, but some other people are going to be upset for whatever reason they can justify to themselves that they shouldn't have fixed this, because Barbarian still wasn't that good, even with this bug. Like, it was pretty busted in PvP, and that's a thing. I'm sure every class complained about it, and that was ultimately the reason this was changed so quickly, because there are other classes with bugs like this for sure, and they haven't been touched yet. The thing is, you have to fix things like this if you ever want a buff in the future. You cannot buff a class that has a blatant bug to how an aspect works, where it's just overperforming, because if that does happen, that's where you get nerfed again for no reason. Then if you get nerfed and then they fix the bug, it's a double nerf. You don't want a double nerf. You want the bug to get fixed so your damage goes down, then they can see the data in front of them and say, okay, this is supposed to be hitting for 10 million and it's not hitting for 60 million anymore. What can we do to increase the damage to make it better for pushing? And overall, that's going to lead to a more balanced and more fun playstyle of the class. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm under no illusion that No one should trust Blizzard, especially after the shout nerfs and the countless nerfs they have done. Not bug fixes, but actual nerfs to Barbarian. With that being said, the end game is for such a small percentage of player base right now, and Barbarian is still the strongest in the game where most players are. Like level 70 to 90, you're not touching a Barbarian. Especially Whirlwind for speed clearing, it's on another level. You're not, no class is that fast, no class has that much damage, and I mean, if you've played Whirlwind or you're another class and you've played with the Whirlwind Barbarian, you know they just gap you in clear speed and how much damage they can put out without needing any cooldowns. We're just spinning and shouting, that's it. And once you have the proper gear for that, it's unlimited. You can just do it over and over again, and yeah, so that's the pretty straightforward part. Pushing, we suffer with for sure. Not all pushing. It's good to clarify that if you're pushing Nightmare Dungeons between, I don't know, 70 to 90, there's no real reason to, but if you were, you can do it with Whirlwind. I myself have done tier 78, 79, haven't done any 80s yet. I almost cleared an 83. I was just talking about this in the Discord. I pretty much blasted through all the way to the end, and there was one triple elite pack with the poison affix, and I failed. I died literally 4 times to that one pack because poisons are stupid. Even if you cleanse it, it's instantly reapplied. You don't have enough potions to survive it, and it's, I don't know, it was just unfortunate. So that's where kind of Whirlwind struggles, but most people aren't trying to speed farm 80s, right? If they're level 70 to 90, which is obviously the more realistic endgame for the majority of players. So just a quick update on the video. So if you see any builds or any videos with Hammer the Ancients doing 50, 60, 70 million damage, they don't do that damage anymore. That's gone. That was the bugged interaction. It's working normally now, so you can play it normally, right? So if you're not pushing, this probably won't affect you at all. If you were pushing, that's unlucky, right? Pushing is frustrating as it is for Hammer the Ancients, so this was definitely a big blow to you, because I know how frustrating it is to push with Hammer the Ancients with all of the terrible affixes melee in general have. So it is what it is in that short video. That's going to conclude this one, and I look forward to showing you guys the one-handed Whirlwind, because that's going to be something special. All right, so just as we were finishing up with this video on Hammer the Ancients, we get a blue post. Now, this could be, I don't want to jump to conclusions here. Everything I said is still going to stand for sure, so it's important to realize. But community manager, the team is looking into Hammer of the Ancient items players have been reporting, which is going to be the Quake aspect, and the team is on it. We will have an update on this once we are done investigating. This could mean a couple of things. One thing could be really bad. The second thing could be realistic. So Hammer of the Ancients, after the change, and they fixed the bug of it doing absurd damage, it's been reported doing much lower damage in the tooltip. So ideally, it's supposed to be doing 50% of the Hammer of the Ancient swing in an AoE. Now, players are reporting it's doing as low as 10% of the total Hammer of the Ancient's damage, which is not good. That needs to be fixed for sure. However, if they walk back on this and they keep it in the bugged state it was at, where it was doing absurd amount of damage, more than it, like, there's no tooltip that can justify the current damage it's doing. This is the problem with if they walk this back, because players are crying about it. If they do this, you will never see a buff to Hammer of the Ancients, because once they buff something that's bugged, it's going to even more so overperform, and then they're going to nerf it, and you don't want that. That's going to be like a double nerf in a sense. What you want is them to fix the aspect to work properly, so it's doing 50% of the damage in an AoE. So if you're critting for 10 million damage, you should be doing 5 million in an AoE. That's how it's supposed to be working. Like I said, the reports have been, it's been doing up to 10% of the total damage, which is a million. We don't want that. We want it to work how it's supposed to work. If they keep it to where you're critting for 10 million in front of you, and over 60, close to 70 million behind you, they're not going to buff the class, and Barbarians need a buff. Hota needs a buff, Whirlwind needs a buff. They're struggling heavily in the end game. They're crushing in the mid game. So good luck with balancing that, but they're struggling heavily. Like it's miserable to push to 100. So we have to keep our eyes open on this. This was 17 minutes ago. Like I said, they're going to update us, but everything in this video is going to pertain to what the deal is, right? So all we can do is wait and hope they make the right choice. They don't just listen to the community that's crying because they probably got baited, like I've already mentioned. And yeah, this is some really important stuff here. So all we can do is watch, wait, and hope that they make the right decision.